Hey everybody, this is Marky Ramone. I'm talking about my first band, Dust. Dust put out their first album in 1971 in America. There wasn't hardly any metal here. So we were very happy to do two metal albums because it just showed how good we could play. I was 17 going on 18, still in high school. So we would rehearse in Brooklyn, me, bassist Kenny Aaronson, and guitar player and singer Richie Wise. We all became friends, came from the same neighborhood. We were influenced by everybody, the blues, some of the English metal bands, and the British invasion, stuff like that. So we all threw that together and started our band Dust. And we would rehearse at a place called the Flatbush Terrace, which was on Flatbush Avenue. And after school, which I rarely attended, we'd go there and play for at least 3 hours. And then we got label interest from Kama Sutra and Buddha Records. We recorded the first album in early '71. So we would rehearse in the day for the album, and then I would go to night school. So after that, the first album came out, it was played, and we started touring with a lot of different bands like Alice Cooper. We did a show with John Mayall. We did some shows with Uriah Heep. And you got to remember, we were still teenagers. We were, very, very happy, grateful that we got signed and all this other stuff. So we realized we had to make a second album. And the second album was titled Heart Attack. And that came out in 1972. And both albums reached Billboard, the top 100 or whatever it was. But after a while touring, we decided to call it quits. In my opinion, it was the wrong record label to be on. Buddha, Kama Sutra, they were really known for bubblegum music. And later on became like a disco label. So we broke up, but we did a lot of good touring. And now, 50 years later, the band is bigger than ever. There's bands doing covers of our songs. And Sony Legacy just re-released them a couple of years ago. Me and Kenny remastered them, and they came out great. We were a three-piece band, and a lot of people want us to get back together again, but that's not going to happen. So I'm just very happy that the albums were re-released and people liked them. They were very heavy albums at the time. You got to understand, what was our competition? There was Led Zeppelin, there was Black Sabbath, there was Mountain, there was Blue Cheer, there were bands like that. But there weren't that many in the United States. So that's why we were happy to make these albums as a representation of how much we liked metal music at the time. And of course, later on, I got into the punk scene. That's a whole other story. But Kenny went on to be a sideman with a lot of people, well-known people. And Richie Wise produced Midnight Train to Georgia and all these other Gladys Knight songs. I ended up auditioning for the New York Dolls. I played with Jane County, and then I played with Richard Hell and the Voidoids. And then after that, the Ramones asked me to join them, which I did in early '78. Being a musician, you have to know different types of music to be able to adapt to the changes of styles, which I was able to do. So now we're listening to Dust albums and realizing we were 18, 19 years old. And a lot of people ask me, how were you able to play that well at that age? Well, the more you rehearse, the better you're going to be. We rehearse nonstop, at least four times a week. So that was the result, those two albums. In 1972, Lester Bangs called us a punk band. That term didn't even start yet, but we were a metal band. If there were indications of punk on those albums, well, maybe there were. But to me, it was just straight ahead metal stuff. Yeah, Trinity Church in New York, which was unbelievable. I never thought that a band would be able to play there. They wanted us to play there. Maybe the guy was a fan, I don't know. Played all places in the village. We did Cobalt Hall in Detroit. So we were catching on, but we broke up too soon. Now, a lot of people said if you did a third album and you hung in there, you would have went over the top. But that's life. Things happen like that. If somebody came and said, would you do a third Dust album? not necessarily play live, I would think about it, you know, because the popularity of the band is definitely at its pinnacle now. So who knows? The possibility could be there, but you know, I'm not waiting. I'm just doing what I do with my group. You know, I look fondly of it because it was my first album. It was in the record store across the street from my high school, and it was hanging up there in the window. Then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to be my friend. They used to call me, you know, long-haired freak and all this stuff. And the teachers didn't like me. The principal definitely didn't like me. And it's funny because one of the heads of the GO, government organization, came up to me and said, "Would your band do a show in the auditorium of the school?" I go, no, you know, because all of a sudden, you remember the way they treated you those 3 years. So that was my answer. No, definitely not. This is dust from the first album cover on the back of it. So here I'm wearing my leather jacket. This is 71, this photo. You can see it. I'm in the middle. And what's funny is that Johnny, Tommy, and Dee Dee of the Ramones used to come see us play in the Village. And John would always tell me that in the van in passing, oh, you know, we'd love to see you guys. We liked you guys a lot. And, you know, we all dressed alike, leather jackets, jeans. So when I joined the Ramones, I was already wearing leather jackets and jeans. You come from Brooklyn, that's what you wear. So I didn't have to go out and get a costume.